Jen owes you one. This is the new one. She's arriving with the noise.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be. Or we just remove that whole section.
Hey.
I know 261.
Section 9 of
The 261.
Oh, okay, I'll have to look at that.
The section 9 said repealed. So I got confused.
Okay, so I got a slide. Kevin sitting in.
The spot here too.
Yeah, don't crowd the chair though, okay?
I don't mind being
Very
crowded.
dangerous.
That's a dangerous spot over there. You sure you wanna go there? 'Cause I can.
That's all for you, Gavin. All for you.
Yeah, section 9 has been repealed. Otherwise, it's actually right.
Okay, so we're threw me off because it said section 9 on the thing.
That's the only section there that's been repealed.
Okay.
I missed you on that board. Awesome. We had like 200 people show up. It's good.
My mom was watching heard it. And they did a very reasonable hours. She was impressed.
Well, yeah,
Diane Backer and-
from 9:10 to 10:30.
Yeah.
Oh, it was good. It'll be better next year. I think Ron's band's gonna play next year, so we'll have music instead of DJ.
So I'd like to call the meeting to order, if I may. And the first item on our agenda is public comment. Anyone from the public would like to provide comments? All right, hearing none, then we will move to the second item on the agenda. Helen, did you want to provide public comment?
Oh, gosh, I just had a couple of questions, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, I was about to skip over it, and I
Thank you.
saw you
Oh,
walking in, so
thank you.
please,
Thank you.
get yourself situated, and then
I got it.
we'll open the floor for you.
Thank you. I just have two questions. One is a clarification on the data by school district. I didn't realize, and I could be wrong, that there was pre-K in Jericho and Underhill.
John, I'm going to turn that to you.
We do have some pre-K students that are EEE, so there are some pre-K students in those districts.
So you're counting the special ed kids in the,
We count
Okay.
all on ADM.
so I didn't realize there was a pre-K effort. I thought that was one of the issues. So there's a title in here, average daily membership Jericho pre-K to 4.
Yeah, there's not, they're a limited number, but we do have students that qualify for special ed,
So
ages
that's what
3 to
they're
5.
kids with special ed needs
Yes.
in those towns, Okay, so it's not public pre-K that's open to families?
No.
Okay. Then the other question I had was about that, because I don't know, in Mount Mansfield Union School District, there are, the last 2 years have pre-K to 4 as a count, as part of the count. So I didn't know if that was a mistake. I just was going through the data.
I'll look.
Okay, it's on page 29.
Yeah, that should be 512.
Okay, I just, it's something I was looking at.
That's a typo.
And we thought we cut that last time.
Yeah,
Okay.
That did come out.
And then the only other thing, I just had a question, because I read someplace in the last couple of weeks about the surplus, the $250,000 surplus for MMU. Did I have that correct? Ending the year?
It was, I'm not sure, it was
It was in the-
250.
Something in that range.
Yeah, it was.
I don't have the
200
exact things, but it was something like that.
Yeah, 230 maybe.
Maybe.
Yep.
I just was trying to put that together with the cuts that were made in the second vote, like how we end up with a $230,000.
Well, that's actually very, very tiny. That's a
Yeah.
$27 million budget.
Right, I know.
And I think anybody, and again, I mean, an accountant or, would say that is really good. You're under 1% of the budget.
And we're.
Could I try this one? They're
Yeah, go ahead.
they're apples and
I'm just
oranges.
trying, okay.
They're apples and oranges. When MMU adopted a budget that involves some cuts, it was adopting a budget for the following fiscal year.
Right. So this is the end of this fiscal year.
The surplus was the previous fiscal year, and
Right.
reflected that our operations were actually
Right.
slightly, a little less than 1%
Yeah.
more expensive than
Great.
expected.
Thank you.
It's okay, great. Any other questions from the public? Right. Hearing none, then we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of minutes. And so I'd like to start with the minutes from, hold on a second, I have them up here on the screen, May 5th, 2014. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to those minutes? Hearing none, does anybody have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
Motion to approve is written.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motions are approved, the minutes are approved. So the next one we have is May 19th, 2014. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions for these minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. The next are the minutes for June 2nd, 2014. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve them as written? Andrew has moved, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. And the minutes of our June 16th, 2014 meeting. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve these minutes as written?
So
So Jean has moved, John has seconded. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of June 25th, 2014. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Does anyone have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Seconded. Discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are adopted. And that feels like a tremendous relief. So the next item in our agenda is review written comments pre-submitted by committee members. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the only comments I believe that we have in writing are those related to attachment A, which is a draft from Chuck and also a draft from Megs. Did I miss any others that folks have? So I'm going to move this item, the actual discussion of attachment A under item number 5. That's where we're going to approve the report articles of agreement for review, and so it should occur, the rest of that should occur under there. So the next item on the agenda is the timeline. Everybody have a copy of that? So I'd like to make some comments on this before we open it up to the floor for discussion. The one item, there's a date on there that's coming up that as I understand it, is immovable, and that is the August 19th State School Board meeting. If we are to actually achieve the goal of having a vote on these articles in November, I think that it has to occur following a State School Board meeting in August. And of course, it's rapidly upon us, given that there is going to have to be a time for discussions between the State Agency of Education and our legal counsel and the committee. And so that is a driving force, I think, right now in our timeline. But with that noted, I'd like to open the floor up to discussion on the timeline. Comments? John, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I would, on the July 16th, I would just change some wording, forward the final draft report. It's not a final report. And then I would ask the committee to consider adding a potential tentative date to meet again July 28th, so that if necessary, if we get feedback from legal counsel or the AOE, that we can consider it and decide whether or not that the committee wants to make changes, finalize the report, and send it to the State Board of Ed.
Question, John, is there a reason why we couldn't, depending on how detailed our edits are tonight, why we couldn't submit the draft report to the school boards and to the state within a matter of a day or two?
I'm hoping tomorrow I would send it out. And what the AOE had shared with me is they need about 3 weeks to review it. That's why I picked the 28th.
So I was focusing on the July 16th date. In reality, that would be the July 8th or 9th for submitting the report.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Could that be a tentative meeting based on whether or not there were items that came up?
Yep. So the, yes. So a couple of things that we could change in this timeline. Number one, I would put in July 8th. I mean, we should, if we are able to approve it tonight, I think we should try to send it tomorrow to the AOE. Where it says July 10th. I'd put, I'd again put final draft report in the language. And then I would eliminate July 16th. I don't think that's redundant and unnecessary.
Right. Gotcha.
And then I would have put in a tentative date of the 28th. Or that's what I would recommend, just that we need to meet again and consider the feedback.
Okay. Comments on the timeline? Chuck, go ahead.
Would it be helpful if we had a kind of temporary subcommittee, including Michael and a couple other people, John, appointed to interact with the Agency of Education so that if they had questions or clarifications or something, and also it would be people who could bring back any issues. It just seems like we could eliminate one cycle in all this if there was a group that could interact on our behalf and keep us informed.
Yeah, Michael and I actually we talked about that as a good idea.
Well, Chuck, when we get to that point in the meeting, if the commit, I have a draft motion that in part addresses that, which people can look at and see if they want to revise or not.
All right,
But I think your suggestion is absolutely right. We need,
we're going to get to the meeting of 28th with something that's fully digested. In terms of anything that comes from the agency of education has been fully digested by this committee and a lawyer, and so the.
Yep.
Okay.
Kevin,
Looking a little bit ahead, August 26th says Vermont primary election. Is there any significance of that election?
When I spoke to the Secretary of State's office, they said that's the key. They would like our ballots and anything that is going to be on the November 4th submitted to them just a day or two after that primary election.
And when we say ballots, it's the question, the merger question.
Two questions, yeah. There's the approval, and then there's school board member question.
Okay. So August 30th, petitions are available. When are petitions, should we have the date on here as to when petitions are due?
Petitions are due. Sure, we can do that.
And so the ballot just says vote for a school director, but doesn't list the actual names. Those, the ones that are going to the Secretary of State a day or two after the primary election. We don't have the petitions available yet.
Right. I think they want to proofread them also, be sure that the wording is correct and so forth.
So
We need
it's
to
just
get the petitions also. I'll have to check.
The fact that we potentially do board and that people need to run needs to be widely
Right.
conveyed to the public.
so your specific
I would-
suggestion
He
is
wants a
add-
date in there.
is add the deadline for
Well, yeah.
submitting petitions to the timeline, Kevin? Do I
Have-
understand?
Yes, please add the when petitions are due, and also I'm confused about the ballots are due to the Secretary of State before the petitions are available. To me, that's lodged. Don't we need to know who's going to be running before we send the ballots to the Secretary of State?
I thought the ballot,
Or is the ballots just the wording of the question, vote for no more than two, or vote for one, and then we'll fill in the names when we have them?
Jim, my understanding was that this was, when you referred to the ballots must be submitted to the Secretary of State, it wasn't the identity of the candidates for school board, it was the questions to be related to the merger to be submitted for yes or no vote, correct?
Yes, but it does raise a good question. When did the ballots with names on them have to be submitted? So I'm just trying to check through their calendar, find that date.
With town meetings, I think it's, articles have to be warned by a certain amount of time.
Right.
So the wording might be articles instead of ballots.
And we have to have our names submitted about 5 weeks at a time. It's the end of January, and then it's March 3rd, so that's generally how the time frame goes. So I would be concerned about that, if we don't hear about what they're expecting.
So we can clarify that.
I think I'm gonna call them again, because this information from the state's not all that clear.
oh yeah, we're on one.
Chuck,
Who decides what the ballot question, the wording of the ballot question? Who decides that? And when does that, in terms of the, how does that fit into the timeline?
The, we should, we should draft something. I think we present it, the boards are gonna need to approve it. That would be between September 1 and October 3rd.
Okay, so this is-
Drafting typically has to be reviewed by legal counsel.
I would suggest we build in that timeline some testing where we show the question to people who are not playing inside baseball, have no knowledge of what's going on, and just make sure it's something that is understandable to someone who's not been involved, and build that into the timeline.
So Jim, could you build in some time in here for review of the draft language? And I suspect we'd have to have it reviewed by this committee, but it has to be ratified by legal counsel. We might actually have to have counsel in on that conference call so we don't chase our tails and say, okay, this is how we'd like to change it, and legal counsel says no, and then we can have another meeting.
So what we did in the last merger, which the statutory language is the same as we, I worked with our attorney that we have now, Chris Leopold, committee reviewed it. They endorsed it because they don't have to approve it, and then we brought it to boards.
So we need that twice.
In Jericho, we just had an election on whether they shrink, but it expanded select board from 3 to 5. And there's a whole bunch of people left without, having missed the question totally.
I'm a little confused now. It's September 1 to October 3 is time when boards formulate the ballot warning. And it seems to me that August 26th ballot submissions are premature.
Or the September 1, October 3rd.
Yeah, we're talking about the 26th.
Okay, can we circle back, Jim? My understanding is the one reason to have the Secretary of State actually be involved in this process is in August is it would save us a little bit of money.
Yes.
Am I correct? How much money?
Whether
Printing of ballots, right?
printing ballots.
So a couple $100 was the estimate?
John, do you know that?
Yeah, probably a few $100.
So given the magnitude of the issues here, might it make more sense for us to make sure that we have done the preparation of the document correctly and spend a couple $100 of taxpayers' money on that, but that would be well spent?
Yeah.
I'm seeing some nodding heads, but if there's anybody who feels differently about it.
I think people should be able to hear about this after Labor Day if they want to run, get the petitions and get it together.
So Jim, what we're gonna do then, unless the committee says otherwise, is we're simply gonna drop having the Secretary of State become the conduit for printing the ballots and therefore requiring us to have the language approved in advance. And then we'll update the timeline so that we will still have school board approval in September, but we'll make sure that this committee has reviewed language with legal counsel in that time frame so that we have something that can go out to the school board which has been approved and vetted by us.
So we'll need to add a meeting in and have that as an agenda item.
Yes.
Question.
Yes.
So are we scratching out that August 26th requirement, and are we sure that we can do that?
We are scratching out, and I understand from Jim that we can.
That's not a requirement, that's, August 26th is the primary. That was the key that the Secretary of State office gave me, because they wanted our ballots for review within a couple days of that election, that's why that's there. The election has really little to do with us, other than that's where they're gonna move on to the next election cycle.
And basically what we forego, if we drop this off our list, as I understand it, is we forego the opportunity to have the state print our merger ballot question. And then we have to print it ourselves.
Right.
Okay. So is everybody content with that?
Yes.
Okay, so there seems, the minute should note there seems to be consensus on that change. All right. Any other suggested revisions to the timeline?
Well, just to be clear,
Okay.
so we still have to revise and clarify the language for the ballot by October 3rd, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, it has to be approved by the boards.
So if it has to be, does it have to be, it has to make the rounds of approval, then we as a committee need to approve it well before October 3rd.
We need to approve it well before October 3rd so that it's the same language submitted to every school district.
So should we suggest a date here and now?
Well, one of the things I want to do before we leave is talk about, if we can, talk about our next meeting schedule. So I would think it would be sometime in August we would have a meeting for that. Thank you. Anybody else? So, Jim, do you have the revisions to the timeline that we've discussed so far?
I think so.
Well, let's make sure we have them clarified, and then we'll have a motion, if we could. So we're just deleting the July 16th line.
July 6th?
Yes.
Can we go back to July?
I don't think we're gonna have the dates tonight. I'm gonna need to make another phone call to Secretary of State's office.
Okay.
It's
So here, let me just summarize the changes. July 10th, it's, instead of final report, it's going to be draft report submitted to AOE, Chris Leopold, and the school boards.
But did we change that date to the 8th?
Could be.
Yes, we
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
July 8th is fine.
Tomorrow.
July 16th is deleted. VMPC meeting, July 28th. August 26th is deleted.
Do we have a time for the July 28th meeting?
I'm not there yet, but I'll get there. August 30th, you're going to add the date that petitions are due and delete the ballots to Secretary of State.
Petitions are what?
The petitions for school directors
Are available.
will be, but you're also going to add to that line the date that they will be due, so that folks know that.
I thought you were saying that was a big.
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And I believe those are all the changes unless I missed one.
Yeah,
So do you want an August meeting?
Well, let me get to that later. I just want to deal with the timeline for the moment.
we were gonna, nope.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the timeline as revised?
Motion to approve the timeline as advised.
Second. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Revised timeline is approved. Now, the next item is noticed as approval of report articles of agreement for review by the Vermont AOE and legal counsel. And the first subtopic there is attachment A. And there are two drafts that we have. One, and I thank you to both of the authors and those who helped with their drafting. One is from Chuck and one is from Meg. I'd like to open the floor up to discussion.
Chuck, I think you did a good job.
So did you, guys.
I haven't been at meetings, but I would like a clarification of 3 versus 4 on your page there, Chuck. Just tell me again what the difference of those two are. The town voting no and sending grace. You just have one word in there only.
Yes, one is for voting and one is for paying taxes. So the first one is a town voting no is in med,
Right.
will have representation on the union district board.
As per,
Right.
yeah.
A town voting no, the same town, and sending only grades 5 through 12 to the union district will pay its share of the expenses from the union district.
Okay.
Because sometimes that's
So the second one is concerned more with the.
just with them. So what I want to do, what I was trying to do is address the question of somebody who may be concerned that we're paying taxes twice, pre-K through 4 in their non-member town and the pre-K through 4 portion of the union district for which they're not sending kids.
Worried that they're paying double.
Worrying that they're paying double. And the change that I've heard from several people here was to add using state-approved formulas. And what I learned while I was working on this is that currently there is kind of a state formula to assign the costs for students in each grade based on the intensity of the grades. Because right now, in Underhill, you're getting taxed based on the Underhill kids at MMU, but it's also allocated based on whether you have kids in grade 12 or kids in grade 5. So we can use those state formulas.
So would you then just put, oh yeah, you've got state formulas there.
Right, and I think someone's going to suggest state-approved formulas while we're looking at it. I mean, I think that would be better than what I wrote down.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to say that I was especially appreciative of the clarity of item number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I like Chuck's format. I would like to offer a sentence. I'm viewing this attachment A as a standalone document for an NMed town district. And I think the content of Article 19, which talks about how the representatives of that district are going to interact on the district board, on the unified district board, I think is important to include here, which is to say that they would not be able to be involved in policy and building decisions that occur in pre-K for schools. So the specific language that I would like the group to entertain is at the end of the sentence on number 3, add, its representation, however, will not be allowed to vote on any unique union district pre-K or programs or building decisions per Article 9.
If Brett was here, he would say, as described in Article 19. He
Do you think?
changed all, yes, fine.
I wonder if we could mirror the exact language that occurs in Article 19. Just lift that language.
Just a second, I'll get you in. So you think your suggestion is to add the sentence board members from the
Well, I might
the
say
towns voting no.
the sentence that Dave had started as its representation will be, I think that's how you started your sentence. You might say its representation will be, and then from the will, go to the article. Will not be allowed to vote. No, I guess that doesn't work either.
Let me recognize Kevin while you cut it through. Go ahead.
I have two comments. First one is with respect to the non-member elementary district voting on the Union District budget. Are we clear that their vote will include the portion of the Union District budget that's pre-K through 4? That's the question. Or will the budget be split? I recall that being discussed months ago. My recollection is that the authority at the meeting might have been Bob Baby, so we might not have firm on it, but will they vote on, will that non-member elementary district be making a budget vote for the Union District's pre-K through 4, as well as 5 through 12, which they'll participate in, or the entire budget?
John?
I think that, my opinion, this committee should do what they think is best. The Agency of Education, their stance on it, at this point, I don't think they know. And so I think this is really a start of working with the Agency of Education to, as much as anything, educate them on what the committee and the new district is trying to do. So the answer to that is, we'll need to wait and see.
So we don't know, and is that okay at this point? Like ramifications? As I think it through, so if they do have a say in the portion of the budget that's pre-K through 4, that it does kind of go against the article that has the board members from that non-member district not voting on anything. It doesn't kind of jive. It's better from a sense of it's cleaner. We can have one budget. We don't have to break it out into 2 questions. But if you break it out into 2 questions, would you break it out into 2 questions on all the other districts? And then if you're doing that, you're not one budget. So I find that to be a very important question. I also think not everything needs to be known going into this, but it certainly would be nice to have that firm before we get that into attachment A. I had one other comment, but we can maybe discuss that.
Okay. Jim, were you in on this issue because you were the next hand I got?
I want to get back to Dave's suggestion, but it's not really in relation to the budget question, so maybe you should pursue those questions first.
So I think I had Bill and then Chuck and then May. If I got you out of order, I apologize.
I think because the State Board of Education hasn't really answered that question yet, that we can't really answer it here yet. I just don't think we have enough information from them, and that's going to come down to probably a legal question that they decide. So I think it's good to have in the back of our minds that question exists, but I don't know if we can answer it in Section 8 tonight.
Yeah, there are some folks that have some opinions at the Agency of Education, but I think that the suggestion that Chuck had, that there's a representative committee to really talk to people like Brad James, who's the finance manager, and really explain what some of the goals are and some of the rationale is, because this is uncharted territory. And so there's some of these questions they're going to be needing to work with representatives from the committee to fully understand. Right now, I haven't heard from their legal counsel regarding this. There's been some opinions from some other folks at the AOE, but I think that that is yet to be absolutely determined.
Chuck, sorry.
I think, one of the disadvantage of going first is all the rules aren't laid out. The advantage is you get the opportunity to say what you want. And there's a number of places where, I mean, in the beginning, we looked at sort of this, you know, we call it a hybrid district and kind of all the issues, and we sort of muddle our way through all that and come up with something that I think is workable, and allows us to operate if we have a town that isn't, doesn't join with us. I feel like if we have two budgets, it really takes the guts out of what we're trying to do here. That we're not able to, if we want to share nursing staff between middle schools and the elementary school that's 100 feet away, we're not going to be able to do that. The same with the custodial staff. There's just so much of what we're trying to do. If we have two budgets and the union district is going to divide up, we're going to have one committee working on one budget, one half working on the other budget. We sort of just end up with not having made much progress. I feel as strongly about not continuing with the CESU supervisory union. I mean, there's, you know, I'm sure there's going to be some opinions about that, but we're saying, you know, this is what we want. You know, I just feel like I think the change here that we're going to guarantee our people is if we say state approved, you know, state approved formulas is that we're going to end up negotiating.
So Meg, I think you're next.
I agree with Kevin's explanation of the dilemma, with one exception. As pointed out so eloquently by Chuck Lacey, a town voting no will be members of two school districts. So the elementary, the NEMED will not be represented by the representative from a town that has voted no. But the representative will continue to be representing their town as a member on the union district. I think it's important to realize that a town voting no is only voting regarding 1/3 of their membership. And I agree that the concern is, should the unified board, the unified budget, somehow separate out the K through 4 issues. But it's important to note that the people who are from the towns that vote no still are members of that union district for the greater part of their membership.
Kevin, you had something else?
So just a quick response. I think it's imperative that there be only one budget, and that whether a district is in or out, they vote on the one and we not split. And I'm nervous about going too much far forward with the risk of it coming back as surprise, you now have to split your budget for all the reasons that Chuck just said. I think we need to be very clear in here that it's the entire budget that they're going to vote on. And when the AOE approves it, that's part of attachment A. So number 3 in here, if we could just add the word entire pre-K through 12 union budget, then that might instigate the point during the review.
So I think we've had a good discussion. It has largely focused on Chuck's draft. So I think what I'm going to do, just so that we can have a frame of reference, I'm going to ask Chuck to actually make a motion to adopt an attachment A. And based on this discussion, Chuck, you may want to make some revisions to what you've heard and incorporate them in your motion. Would that make sense for the committee?
Yes.
You mean like think on the fly? Well, thank you for the opportunity to think on the fly. So Kevin, where would you put entire budget?
Number 3, the town voting no and sending grades back to voting district will have representation in the district board, and its voters will vote on the entire pre-K through 12 union district budget.
Okay. And then on, I think that's good. And then on 4, we'll say the town voting no and sending only grades 5 through 12 union district will pay a proportional share of the union district expenses using state approved formulas. And then on adding, we're talking about adding the 9th article.
No, we're adding the freedom is representation, that's the one that David was adding.
Article 19.
3.
Again, go on this one.
So he was talking about just
There's
adding
two,
a
yes.
sentence to Article 3.
So adding some.
Not adding a new point on there.
Okay, so it's a new sentence, and then the question, as we left it, Dave, was whether to have it be the entire last sentence of Article 19?
I like to hear this.
Taking into consideration Meg's concern, I think if it just says its representation, however, will not be allowed to vote on any unique union district pre-K or program or building decision. It's the complete extract.
Okay.
Read one more time, please. Its representation.
However, will not be allowed to vote on, it's the end of Article 19, end of that sentence.
Any unique union district.
You could even take out the word allow. Will not vote on any,
Yeah.
well, no, be allowed is probably, yeah, leave that in.
And you said its representation, should we say its board representation, to make a distinction from the voters?
So Jim, can you read that back to make sure you have it, please?
Its representation, well, I was asking, this is going to be attached to number 2,
3.
which has the entire pre-K-12 change also. Okay. Its representation.
It's board representation.
It's board representation. Will not be allowed to vote on, and then I go back to what?
Its board representation will not be allowed to vote on any unique union district pre-K through 4 program or building decisions. So with those 3 changes,
When can I have my comment about this? Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So, I think I would recommend against Dave's suggestion. We're going to ask our attorney, Chris Leopold, to argue to the state board that we are going to function as a supervisory district. That's what holds our argument together. And Title 16, 261A, duties of the supervisory union, specifically lists the duties of a supervisory union. And in there is program, curriculum, there's a whole list of things that the SU has to address and oversee. So to say, yes, we're going to function as an SU, but by the way, not in this case. I think we're trying to get our cake and eat it too. And they're going to fall one way or the other, but they're not going to give us both positions, I don't think. That makes sense? You can't function as an SU and ignore the responsibilities of an SU.
Kevin and then Diane.
Chuck, on number 6, for clarification, where it says a district is going to facilitate program research sharing among schools, larger scale possibilities. That's really around pre-K through 4, that focus. And any of those changes in the pre-K through 4, for better or for worse, will not accrue to NMED. When I read that, I read it a couple times now, and it, to me, it states that any improvements that we make, even in the 5 through 12, would not accrue down to the NMED. And I understand that your definition of NMED is specifically that district that's only serving K through pre-K through 4. But I think it can be interpreted to mean the town as well. So I would just ask you to consider, if I can speak here, number 6, specifically mentioning those opportunities for improvements in this pre-K to 4 area versus the broader district. Because if there is an improvement gained in 5 to 12, that town will benefit from it.
How about if we spell out in number 6 only, non-member elementary district?
To me personally, a non-member elementary district is referencing a town that votes no.
But it's not, and somehow, I think in another place, we need to make it clear so that the reader's not making that mistake at that point. That if we don't have NMed towns, we have NMed districts. And every town, if this merger goes through, every town will be a member of the union district. And somehow we need to, I'd be more, if it's not clear we'll get to that point, I want to fix it before then. People need to get it in their heads that every, maybe earlier on one, I don't know, maybe in the preamble of the first paragraph, that somehow we need to get clear that every one of the 6 districts, every one of the 5 towns is going to be member of the union district.
I think it does in the first 2
I'm
bullets.
sorry, Diane, I think it's been waiting for a while, and I'll come to you, Brad.
And I think I look at this differently, and being part of the MNU school board, is I don't see the conflict that you're creating. I can keep it in my mind that they're an MNed, but they're still part of the district. I don't have that same problem. I don't assign that opinion to the town in the same way. And I also don't see your opinion, because I see many times on MNU where if someone has a conflict of interest for any particular reason, they recuse themselves from the vote. We do that a lot, and people are fine with that. So if there's something that came up that had to do with the pre-K through 4 program, I can see those people just saying, okay, well, we're going to abstain. And it's just, there's no hard feelings, there's no problem about it. So I kind of just wanted to bring that point up in terms of how you look at this philosophically.
So Brett is next. I don't need to speak. Okay, Bill.
I think with what John just said about how this is all uncharted territory and we're kind of making our own way here, why can't we have our cake and eat it too? Let's put the language in there. I think we all like that language, and let's see if they'll approve it, if it flies. If it doesn't, we can deal with it on the July 28th meeting.
Are you talking about inserting the word elementary, or what language are you talking about?
David's suggestion with your edit next.
Oh.
The one that James.
Okay.
So Diane?
The concept, or is it the wording will not be allowed to? Because you could change the wording to will recuse themselves from a vote regarding. That sounds just nicer, but it still ends up being the same thing.
I like it.
It sounds more collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, it sounds collaborative, but it still gets you to the same spot. I still think that even if we have 1 or 2 towns, that they ought to be able to vote on the whole budget. I think that it will be fine.
Yeah.
With the people. I think we're overthinking that part.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
So, great discussion, but what I'd like to do is get us to the point now, if you're ready, where we can actually start making some decisions.
There's
So,
a problem here. We're talking about changing Article 19.
we
We
don't,
can't do that.
We're not
we
changing
need a
our-
2/3 vote to go revisit anything else in the. For those of you who weren't here, didn't carefully read the minutes, in our last meeting, we adopted a rule for the further discussion on these articles. And that rule provides that everything but this attachment A has been approved. The attachment A is the last thing to be approved. If anybody wants to revisit anything outside of attachment A, you need a 2/3 vote of this committee. And the intent behind the motion was, which was approved by the committee, was to establish a rule of debate so that we could actually reach closure as opposed to having everything reopened and not meeting our deadline. Bill?
But since we're not talking about Article 15, can we just go
19.
19, whatever it is, since we're not talking about that, since we're talking about number 3 on attachment A?
This attachment is wide open. This
Well, I
attachment's
know,
wide
that's
open.
what I'm saying, but we're not talking about that attachment, Megs.
We're talking about the language.
The language in number 3, not the language in Article 19.
Well, Bill,
Max is
we are
making a good
talking
point.
about the
If-
language that's in Article 9 that we're going to lift and put into attachment A. That's the only reason why it's come up.
Yeah, no, I think Max is making a good point.
So here's what I would like to do to frame this. I would like a very specific motion made to one or others of the attachment A's to put it before the committee for a vote. And I want to look to the authors of the 2 principal drafts to present that motion with any amendments that they want to introduce at this time. So either of the drafters, please make a motion.
Make a motion that you approve the attachment A that I submitted with 3 changes. One is on item 3 that will say its voters will vote on the entire Union District budget. On item 4, it will say Union District expenses using state-approved formulas. And item 3, and its board representation will not be allowed to vote on any Union District pre-K through 4 program or building decisions. Add parenthetically that I like the language that Diane suggested, but I think that it would be good for the language between the attachment A and Article 19 be the same. So if I had if I could wave a wand and go back and change the language in Article 19, I would do that, but I don't know. I'm scared to death what Michael's going to say.
Okay.
I would definitely.
Are you seconding that you're scared to death what I'm going to say? No. You'll second
Let the record show.
Right. So discussion on the motion. Diane?
My question is, at what point could I make a motion to suspend the rules so we could reconcile the languages or the appendix?
Once attachment A is adopted, then we can see if there's a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules.
And change the language in both places.
Right.
Yeah. But I'll be right behind you.
More discussion on attachment A.
I just have one question, Chuck. So the note that I made when, on number 3, I'd written the entire pre-K through 12 Union District budget. Does it make a difference? The entire budget for pre-K through 12? I think it's clearer for someone like me.
Okay, I think that's helpful. On the entire
Pre-K through 12.
pre-K
What is she?
through pre-K to 12 budget. I think that's good.
Pre-K through 12.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, it looks like the process that is unfolding here is that we are going to proceed with tweaking Chuck's attachment A and vote to approve it, which means that we won't have a chance to discuss my suggestions in my attachment A. And as much as I do like basically the readability and the points that Chuck makes, I would appreciate an opportunity to share some of the language under what the Union District will provide. It seems like it's germane since we're talking about what's going to be in attachment A.
Okay. So would you, I have a motion pending on this specific attachment A. Do you have revisions to this that you would like to present? And if not, then what I would suggest you do is to suggest to the committee that a no vote on Chuck's motion would then open the floor up to further revision and discussion of your attachment A. That's what I would suggest.
I'm not interested in encouraging a no vote on his attachment. but I would like to consider adding some of the language that's in my suggestions in it.
Do you have a specific amendment to suggest?
Sure, I'll figure something out.
Okay.
I would draw people's attention to the bulleted items.
Where is it? She's suggesting incorporating more language, or what's?
I have 4 bulleted items.
Okay.
I would ask the group to consider whether the concept of the umbrella organization is included in Chuck's version. I would ask if the services provided by the Union District to all schools, my second bullet, whether that information is included in this attachment. I would ask whether the third bullet, member schools can anticipate shared savings due to efficiencies of scale, is in there. And finally, the fourth bullet, I would like to read as is. NEMED schools will be billed for district services such as superintendent and office management, business office, special education, transportation, and curriculum. New assessment formulas will be developed by the Union District Board of School Directors, subject to approval by the State Board of Education. I'm thinking that that concept of state approval is in Chuck's number 4, where he included using state-approved formulas. But I want to discuss that and make sure that that is in there.
So the way I want to structure this then is the first step is to see if the maker of the motion wishes to accept any of those suggestions as a friendly amendment.
You know, my hope in this was to speak specifically to towns voting no. And I think that the changes with the supervisory union are kind of outside that scope. They affect all the areas directly. I don't think we should commit to what services would be provided by the Union District to all schools. I think, what I've said here is that we'll be providing supervisory union services according to state law. And I think what the state law is will change over time. The state may require additional things. That it could be that the Union District doesn't provide one of these things by mutual agreement. I don't think we should be prescriptive about what the services are, other than to give examples and reassurance to every town that they're not, they're still going to have a superintendent regardless of how they vote. I feel like member schools can anticipate shared savings due to efficiencies of scale. I don't think we can make that promise. I think we're giving the next board the tools to achieve that. If the community wants to anticipate that, it needs to elect a board that's going to do that. And which is why I didn't want to be, I tried to be cautious about that in number 6 by saying that the Union District is being designed to facilitate things that I knew that we could deliver on. The Union District is designed to facilitate program and resource sharing among schools. Where that happens that's up to the future board. We're going to have larger economies of scale and school choice possibilities. And,
I'm comfortable.
And, whether these things happen, it's really up to the future board. And I'm kind of reluctant to make anything that looks like a guarantee. That's really up to the community to elect the board it wants to deliver, what it wants. MED schools will be billed for district services. I kind of feel like that's clear in here. You know,
I'll remove my motion.
I appreciate that it says such as, because I think all we can do is provide examples at this point. And I think I did not say in here that, did I say in here that the formulas will be, I did say the union district will be billing the district. I didn't, but I did refer to Article 20, which I think does say that.
All right, so.
Repeating Article 20, I don't have the stomach for that.
So Chuck, what I take it, the gist of your comments is you would not accept those as a friendly amendment. Megs?
I have looked over what we've added, and I feel that what I'm looking for has been embedded in your statements, so I withdraw my motion.
Okay. So is there any other discussion, or are you ready for a vote on the motion to adopt attachment A as, that was prepared by Chuck as amended as he described earlier in his comments? Do you want to go over those amendments again, Jim, just to make sure we have them? Please.
Number 3, third line, and its voters will vote on the entire pre-K 12 Union District budget. And the next article, for number 4, second line, all the way to the right, Union District expenses using state-approved formulas. And then added to number 3 is Dave's statement. Board representation, however, will not be allowed to vote on any unique Union District pre-K 12, pre-K 4 program or building decisions. These are the only 3 changes I had so far.
Chuck, would you consider a friendly motion to add to your motion that upon approval of this, we will reopen Article 19? Or we will take a vote
I'm gonna rule that out.
consider?
I'm gonna rule that out of order.
Okay.
I'm personally friendly to the idea.
I want
I'm
to
right
say,
behind that.
if there's a vote on it, I'm gonna keep the vote, I'm gonna keep it germane to just this issue. Anyone want to challenge the chair? Okay. All right.
Yes, but not on that point.
The duel is at dawn.
So any other discussion before we hold the vote?
Can I just make a comment?
Please.
Next, I just want to acknowledge your work on this because it helped me calibrate how I see this. So just thank you very much.
I'm going to add to that after we vote.
What's that?
I'm going to add to that after we vote.
Okay.
So we can go on the process.
Okay. All right, so a vote on the motion then. All those in favor of adopting attachment A as revised signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
1 no. Abstentions? All right, so it is a 14-1 vote. By the way, there are 15 representatives here tonight. Congratulations to you all. All right. Jim?
So just to be clear, I'm deleting everything in attachment A and replacing it with Chuck's with the changes we made.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So, Diane.
Would this be a time where I could make a motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of changing the language in Article 19 and the appendix? Or would this not be a time where I could do that?
You may do that, but I'm going to make a cautionary note to everybody. The reason we adopted that rule,
So we would go back to
so we would go back and forth forever and ever. And the intention behind the rule and the discussion was to recognize that we have a very smart and engaged committee that could probably stay smartly engaged on these questions for a long time at the risk of never bringing them to closure. But that obviously may be my viewpoint alone. The rule does allow, if you can get a 2/3 vote, to open discussion on an issue, but you need 2/3 to literally open discussion. So with that,
the next comment would be that in taking heed of your advice, my interpretation, and I would extend this interpretation to everyone who asked me about would not be allowed to vote, really means they would be encouraged or asked to abstain, just from a practical purpose of having lived in a union school board situation, and I know how that functions. So I can let it go, unless there are other people. I mean, I don't want to make this into a big thing where we'll keep opening it up on all of the articles either.
But now would be the time, if anybody has a motion on this or anything else that they'd like to bring before the committee, just to discuss something else, you'll need a 2/3 vote. Right?
I have a clarifying question.
Yes.
Could someone elaborate on clarify the reasoning why we might consider changing will not be allowed? Is it to make the language softer and more friendly? Or is it to make the language clearer?
I think it's softer and more collaborative sounding. I don't think it substantially changes what happens at the end.
So do I have a,
So I would just say sounds punitive, the ability now that it will not be allowed sounds punitive to me, whereas will recuse themselves sounds much more collaborative.
next?
Not that we're discussing.
I'm close to ruling it out of order,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to give you some leeway.
Well, I was going to propose that we have a floor vote as to whether we can discuss Article 19.
Okay, so that is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, this requires a 2/3 vote, which means, all
I would like to suggest a friendly amendment to the motion.
right, I'll let,
I would like us to be quite limited in the motion, and that the motion really just be limited to the specific language around the language around allowing an amendment to vote.
I'm not concerned about that. If there's a comma in there that shouldn't be there, and I don't want to be restricted from mentioning that comma. So I think I'm
So is there a
comfortable
motion just for Article 19? and
just for Article 19.
all right, so I'm going to ask for a show of hands. This requires 10 votes to approve. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 10 opposed. So floor is open for Article 19, 10-5 vote.
Well, I'd like to mention, there's a comma that shouldn't be there.
Done. Where is the comma that should not be there?
Take any one of them.
It's before the word "or building decisions," and it changes the meaning to mean that it would not be allowed to vote on building decisions. If you take that comma out, it simply means building decisions regarding K through 4.
Yeah.
Is there any opposition to deleting the comma? Any other suggested revisions to Article 19? Diane?
I would suggest that in the last sentence, the board members from the NMED will have voting powers for all general union district actions, but will be asked to recuse their vote on any unique union district pre-K or program.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can I discuss that?
No, there needs to be a second
Second.
first, then we open up the floor.
I second.
Okay, now you can discuss.
So if we actually say they will be asked, that means they have to be asked not to vote. Would you be comfortable with will be encouraged to abstain?
No, as a practical matter, as the chair of the board, I would say all NMED representatives, or all representatives who are part of the NMED here, need to recuse their votes on this one, and just direct that.
Well, then that's not asking,
Just
that's
real quick,
directing.
editorial note, we just should note for the record that Diane just volunteered to be chair of the board. Can't let her off the hook for that one. Max, go ahead.
That would be, that they would be asked, that they would be directed not to vote, not asked not
I
to
would probably
vote.
say gentle reminder, but.
Yeah.
Bill, I think you were there.
I would like to go with will recuse.
Okay.
That's
Will
fine, you got it.
recuse themselves
Yeah.
from the vote on any unique.
You understand as well?
Would you accept that as a
Yes,
friendly
absolutely.
amendment? Kevin, would you accept that as second as a
Absolutely.
friendly amendment? More discussion.
Read it again, but will refuse.
But
any-
will recuse themselves from the vote or any vote on any
From
unique.
votes.
Any unique vote.
On any
Votes on
Unique
any
union district.
Recuse themselves from votes.
on any unique union district K through 4 program.
Chuck?
Would you like to extend that language to attachment A at the same time?
Yeah,
I'll come back to that if it passes here.
awesome.
Okay? Any other discussion on it? Brett?
Is recusing a voluntary action? Do we need to say must recuse? Is will strong enough?
Will is strong enough.
Will is strong.
You know, legalese here, so that's what my question.
Yeah, no, I think Will is strong.
Will recuse themselves from votes on any meeting.
Any other discussion? All right, are you ready for a vote? Jim, do you have the language? Diane, could you please make sure Jim has it?
Will recuse themselves.
Themselves.
From votes. From votes
From votes.
on any meeting.
Yeah,
Basically, there's 4 words you cross out, and 4 words you put in,
And a comma to be.
taken out.
Jim, do you have it now?
Yes.
Are you ready for a vote on the question? And a simple
Yes.
majority is required to adopt this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, so now it would be in order if you want to make the same change in attachment A. Chuck, is that your motion? Diane, is that your motion?
Yes, I move that we make the exact same change from the new wording in Article 19 over to attachment A.
I second.
Where are we in that attachment A?
That would be the addition onto the three.
However, will recuse.
It's board representation, however, will
Over
recuse
here.
themselves from
votes on any unique.
Any discussion on the motion? Are you ready for a vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. So are you ready for a motion concerning approval of the report?
Yes.
All right, if you will indulge me, I take no pride of authorship, but I did think I should prepare something for the committee to review, and I think I have extras. I should have enough to go out. Yeah, I should have. Well, I have it on me.
Oh, Michael?
Yes.
One question here.
Yes.
On top of the wonderful things I'm about to approve, it says majority report, recommending adoption.
Yes.
And then it says minority.
Right.
It's not there, so it'd be kind of hard for me to approve this whole wonderful thing, because we haven't, I'm just saying, just throwing it out there.
My understanding is that Megs has just completed a minority report. Am I correct, Megs? I didn't have a chance to review it yet.
Yeah, I have, it may be copied and distributed today.
Okay. But if the intent behind build majority and minority report format is that it allows the committee members to sign on to whichever viewpoint they want. And so my sense is that at some point, people will read Meg's draft and decide whether they want to sign it or not.
So my question is that part of what we're approving, or is this just not matter for right now?
All you are approving is the fact that if people want to do a minority report, they have the discretion and the ability to do that.
And
You're
it's
not
something
endorsing
that
that
could get added to this document? And
It would
we'll
be added to
approve
the
it,
document as a minority report.
But will we get to vet that?
No,
Okay,
not unless you are joining that minority report.
okay. So they did not vet on the majority report at all?
I do not believe they vetted other than to make some suggestions where we had some very obvious typographical errors and to contribute productively.
Will we be allowed to contribute productively to
I
their?
certainly hope that we would do that.
Okay.
It's a helpful comment.
What is the opportunity for the majority report to respond to any issues raised in the report?
That would be something that we would address in our next meeting, or if somebody sees something that's critical there, we could even convene a special meeting.
But it won't be added till we approve it. Be added?
There's no surprises in it. You've been hearing these things for 9 months.
My intention as chair would be to allow the minority to speak their voice. The majority will speak its own voice. If there is a question raised by the minority report that people want to respond to make sure that we have that opportunity to do it.
And does that require a 2/3 vote?
No.
So to get this discussion moving, I want to make a motion to approve this. Sent out.
So the written motion that the chair distributed, you're making that, John?
I'm making that motion to approve that.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
And now we can have the discussion.
Discussion.
Michael, I've been a little stuck on the majority-minority conversation here. What I'm hearing, the process gives me pause a little bit. In that Meg, the author of the minority report, has contributed productively but interactively with the writing of these articles. And as such, the majority report, which was part of the process of the creation of these articles. And none of us have an opportunity to interact and engage with any of the substance of the minority report. And that to me feels unequal. And while I don't think there'll be much in there that's a surprise, if anything that's a surprise, I would like the opportunity to at least read it and respond to it and have a chance, if needed, to address it. And I'm not clear on how we're going to go about doing that if we're approving this before it's even seen.
Well, then it can't go in because we didn't approve it in there, right?
Well, that's
Well,
part of my
here,
question.
if you can see me, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And I think that's a legitimate concern, Brett. But I'm also struggling with the implications of not including a minority report if a member of this committee has a minority viewpoint. Every committee member has the automatic right simply to publish something and say, this is my viewpoint, I dissent. And I guess my best suggestion, do you have your minority report in writing?
I do.
Can we make copies of it now?
Yes, you can.
Can we take 5 minutes to review it?
Yeah.
And see if that requires us to take any more time?
Yeah, just a note of clarification, if I may. I have absolutely no qualms with the minority report being included. None. I couldn't have said it better. I have qualms with not having the opportunity, if needed, to respond and have that response be incorporated into the majority report.
Okay, so let's take a look at this and then we'll see what the committee's pleasure is.
I have a question.
Yes?
If we follow Brett's reasoning, then wouldn't we have to have a 2/3 vote again to, if we saw something in the minority report that we wanted to incorporate into the majority report, wouldn't we have to have a 2/3 vote to do that? Or would it prolong the discussion? Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility, but let's cross that bridge when we come to it. I mean, the one thing I would suggest to the committee as a whole is that it's very important to defer to the right of dissenters to dissent. And to not try to edit their dissent other than in productive ways to respect the fact that they have a different viewpoint. And I understand that we all would have wished to see something sooner, but to me, I'm very concerned that this committee not take an action that is perceived by others as stopping the publication of dissent. To me, that's the worst issue at this point.
Right.
I think the two interests are, if it goes in an envelope and leaves here, it ought to be factually correct. And the opportunity to make sure either that it is factually correct, or we have a chance to point out that it's not factually correct, is important. And I also think it's important that majority report has either both sides have the opportunity to respond to the major points raised by the other. I mean, I've read some of the decisions from this, and I don't want to, compare us to the Supreme Court, but it was interesting to read the recent opinions that came out and how both both opinions commented on what the others were saying. And it was really clear that the group of four had shown their dissent to the group of five, and the group of five had, and each had the opportunity, which provided some real benefit to the readers to hear each other's comments.
So I'm gonna suspend the discussion for the moment until everybody has a chance to review this. Sorry, copies will be here momentarily.
Could I ask something on?
Not if I can't respond, because I have my hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to just suspend for just a moment. I'll be here in just a second.
Excuse me, Michael, do you want this thing you submitted in minutes?
Excuse me?
Do you want this thing you passed around in minutes?
Well, it's the motion has been made and seconded. If it is adopted, I will want it in minutes, please. I could email it through.
Okay, is there an extra one to make here? We can share.
Read it.
It's by heart.
Can you email this to me tonight?
Oh, I don't have your email, but Michael can.
I can email it to you, just arrive in my email box.
It just arrived in your box now?
4:15,
Yeah.
4:16, sorry.
Yeah, my husband predicted I'd get it done at 3 a.m. Sunday night, Monday morning. I was a little later than that. So I went to bed.
Next.
So did we determine the time for this 28th?
No, I don't want to.
Is that out of order?
Yeah, I really, Jim, could you check on the copy of this? Yes, it is.
Actually, I those emails up to other people. But I'm not allowed to email anybody, so that's why I sent it. Anyway.
That's already also.
I think there was.
We got that slide. There we go.
My giant printer doesn't do that.
Go ahead.
Can I hear your coffee?
Yes. You can have it.
Thank you.
Are there extra copies, because it didn't get all the way around the room?
And do you make sure all the members get one?
Kevin?
Thank you.
And maybe,
Jim needs one.
Is anyone not ready? And if you're not, please just raise your hand. Okay, take it, then let's go. everybody had an opportunity to review this? Okay. So I'm going to open the floor to discussion on the following question. Do folks want to allow the minority report to be included in our document at this time or not? Bill, you're the first one.
Not as written. I think that the conclusion page is excellent and well in line with the majority report, but I think that this is just way too much. I mean, I like the conclusion. If I'm looking for an opinion, that kind of lays it right out, which is pretty much what the majority report does too. But getting into all the specifics here, these can't be debated. I mean, we're not gonna write a novel for the majority report. So debating the 800 little specific things in here isn't gonna work. That's just my take on it, that we include the conclusion if Megs is okay with that.
Other discussion on the minority report, whether it should be included or not.
I would agree, actually, and that the conclusion would be the only part of this report, a minority report, I would support, or because the first 6 pages, there are several points made that I think are incorrect. And would take issue with it. So, and I too think that the conclusion makes the point very well, and there's no additional information needed.
Without cautionary footnotes.
Other discussion on this? Okay,
I like the first 2 paragraphs also in the front, that's, as well as the conclusion. And a lot of what I read in here, we were constrained by our report, by the format and our objective, and simply what the agency of education wanted, so that a lot of the questions and a lot of the hanging things couldn't even be addressed in the report anyway. That's how I felt. But not sure about where we stand with putting it in.
other discussion.
Megs, it's your report. What do you think?
This is what I think.
In its entirety?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just as a side, Megs, it sounds like you really would have liked page 833, 883, because it would have given you 5 years to do all of that.
Yeah, that's a moot point.
It is. It is.
all right, so I'm gonna set aside John's motion for the moment. Come back to John. I'm prepared to accept the motion in relation to the minority report, and I'll recognize Meg's first if she'd like to make a motion.
I would move that the minority report be sent to Montpelier with the merger report.
Is there a second for that motion? Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay? Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Please.
I have to share, Megs, I'm pretty disappointed that this comes to the last minute. It feels disrespectful of the committee, feels manipulative. And I'm disappointed that we're seeing this 11 minutes before this meeting is going to be adjourned. The last meeting, I'm really struggling with how to get to yes on including your voice. I think that's an important part of the democratic process here. but not having an opportunity to substantively respond to the accusations in here. I do feel it does seem to me like accusations is, I think it's out of step with the approach of the committee. And to include this minority report feels like it's it doesn't, feels like it's just not an accurate snapshot of the process and the outcomes. While I'm hesitant to support including it, I think it's important to include it. I think the committee should consider having a sentence or two or three that responds directly to the report, both its tone and its substance.
So any more discussion on the motion to include the minority report as written?
Question.
Yes.
I do feel that I need to respond to the report, can't do it on the fly, getting it, something, I was expecting something, if it was gonna come at the last minute, it would be something that you could really kind of read and digest and respond to. Something, of this length that's really hard. I think I would support including, want to hear what other people have to say, but I do feel it's important that a majority report would respond to some of the accusations in here and build that into the agenda on the next meeting.
Okay.
I understand if our changes to this, maybe at this point we could say we're not able to respond to the accusations in here, but that we do make changes to this to respond to it in our next meeting.
Okay.
I think I assumed that the minority report would be similar to the majority report and speak on, in that sort of tone, in terms of multiple questions and itemizing and using numbers and things that could easily be debated back and forth. So that certainly had been my hope, was that it would have been a 1 or 2 page that would have summed up all of those pieces. I'm at a loss as to where we're at too, because I fully expected to want to read it and also to want to include it. But it does feel out of character. Too many questions, too much data.
Other discussion on the question? All right, then I'm going to call a vote on the question, and the question is whether to include the minority report as written in the submission to the state. Those in favor, I'm going to ask for a show of hands. Those in favor of including it, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those opposed, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The motion fails. Are there any other motions related to the minority report?
Not the minority.
To the minority report?
Well, related to the minority report,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we revisit inclusion of the minority report, having had time to do responses to the minority report at our next meeting.
Okay. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it, sorry.
Discussion on that motion.
I guess I'm lost here, so if you correct me. This meeting tonight was designed, this was it. We're done tonight, we're sending our report along to the state. And I'm reluctant to spend any more time talking about any other documents. And we're postponing this vote, or whatever. We need to get this report to the state, and we agreed that tonight would be the night we do this. And I'm going to be extremely disappointed if we do not move on that.
Your motion is next on the agenda. I'm trying to finish up with the minority report. But I understand your comments. Diane, I think you were next, and then Meg's, and then Bill.
The only other thing I would say, and I know you have a motion on the table, but putting out something that said the minority report came in at the last minute and we were not able to respond to it, or if there was some way where we could give Megs an opportunity, or say that the minority report is coming and give Megs an opportunity to revisit it, but it's just want to, you know.
There were other hands. Megs, I think you were next.
Well, I would like to defend myself. The last meeting we had, which was a week and a half ago, this committee agreed that a minority report could be included. It was a tremendous amount of work to put this report together. I basically have thought about it 24/7 since that meeting. It was very important for me to be accurate and respectful and to give the committee and the proposal the credit where credit was due. I have been forthright throughout this process with my honest, genuine, sincere concerns. I have been consistently overruled. And I understand that that's a democratic process. I also understand that we all want the best for our children. I did not intentionally bring this here at the last minute. This was tremendously difficult for me to do because I felt like I really had to refer to the document very carefully, refer to data that had been referenced in the document. It wasn't an easy, seat of the pants kind of project. I hoped to have finished it by Saturday, Sunday. It was hard. It was hard. I thought I'd have it done by 11 this morning and have it off to Michael. I didn't send it off to Michael until 4:15. I did get it done at the last minute. It's not because I put it off till the last minute. So I want you to know that I was not intentionally disrespectful by your not having it before the meeting. However, the meeting a week and a half ago said that it should be here by the 7th. So as much as I would have liked to have sent it sooner, I felt like I did follow what we had agreed to. And it would have been foolish for me to have created this document without some sense that the committee was going to include it. I think if you look carefully, you will see that this document indicates that we share many goals. And it primarily says we have more homework to do. I don't mean to insult anyone by saying we have more homework to do. So I apologize if you take it that way, but it's a sincere effort to try to do the best thing for our communities. Thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you. So there were other hands, and I apologize if I don't have the order they were in. Bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Meg, we've had a differencing of opinion a few times.
Yes.
I suggested that we put the conclusion in there because I think it's important that we include how you feel. And I think that your conclusion puts that out there without muddling anything. I think it puts it out there without being accusatory. I think it puts your argument out there very well. But I also think that including the rest of it serves a disservice to this board. On that note, I would like to call the previous question.
I'm gonna exercise my discretion because Elena would have been recognized before you.
Sorry.
So I'm gonna have Elena
It's just, and I don't know what the technicalities are around minority report, but this to me resonates as a dissenting opinion. Because we haven't had time to react and collaborate on it, there's a lot of good points in it. Is there a matter of format to recognize this as a dissenting opinion and have it included? We have to have a majority report and a minority report, is that how it's structured?
Well, we currently have a majority report structure, which is built in now, and I don't think it's revisitable. And in my mind, at least, minority report and dissenting opinion are distinguishable. So, any other debate on the question? And the question is whether to revisit the inclusion of a minority report at our July 28th meeting.
Well,
Well,
we have another motion on the floor.
No, that is the motion that's on the floor right now.
I thought we suspended his motion.
John's motion has been
Okay.
suspended.
Gotcha.
Rex's motion is to revisit the inclusion of a minority report on July 28th. So I'm
And to seek a mechanism to respond to it within the majority report.
Gene, did you have a comment?
Would that mean that we would not send the majority report?
No.
Okay.
It's just not going to be included at this time. That would be the effect of approving the motion. Diane?
Can you make a friendly amendment at this point?
If it's accepted, I'll allow it.
I would make an amendment that we send the minority report with the piece that indicates that it did come in late and we have not fully responded to it. In other words,
Didn't come in late.
okay, never mind.
So I think it's time, Chuck, I would like to get a vote on this so that we can move forward. But Chuck, go ahead.
I mean, I'm gonna vote against this. I feel like we should, the report did come in when it was, I was expecting a minority report that would be somewhat analogous to the majority report in terms of length and brevity and all that and kind of format, but, we weren't specific on that. I feel like it came in, I feel like we should submit it, and I think we should reserve the opportunity to revise the majority report, at our next meeting. I think it would be a mistake to not send a minority report in.
We have Rex's motion, I'm going to call for a vote on it. All those in favor of Rex's motion, please raise your hands.
What's his motion?
All right, could you restate your motion, please, Rex?
My thinking's evolving over here, so I don't know if I can fully reiterate it.
I understood your motion to be that the committee will revisit the minority report as its July 28th meeting and any responses that we'd like to make to it. Did I understand your motion correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to call for a vote by a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Motion fails. So, at this time, I think unless there is some other motion on the minority report, I think it's time for us to move to the main motion. Diane?
I want to remove to accept the minority report
Second.
In its entirety?
in its entirety. If that's allowed.
Did you vote against sending it to the first time? Did you vote against it? You did? Is there another person who voted against it that wishes to change their vote? That would be a second requirement. There is. Okay, so that motion is now germane. It's on the floor. I'm going to restrict debate on this, though. I'm going to call for a vote on it. Is anybody overruling my rule? Chuck?
A friendly amendment that we also reserve the opportunity to make changes to the majority report at the next meeting.
I would accept that amendment.
All right. So we have the motion to include the minority report as written, subject to the right of the majority to revise its report or conceivably simply write a rebuttal. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3. Those opposed? Motion carries. So now, may we move to the main motion, which John made, and who seconded it?
Can you just clarify for me where we are?
Where we are is the minority report will be submitted as part of what we submit to the state tomorrow. Subject to the ability of the committee to either edit its own report at its next meeting or to write a rebuttal. And I will, in the next agenda, want to set a pretty strong time limit for discussing rebuttals. And I will not want to, subject to your overruling me, not want to see this become simply we're going to rewrite everything forever. But that'll be subject to being overruled by the committee. So the main motion is the motion that is in writing. Any more discussion on that?
Question, is the timeline still intact that we reviewed in the past in terms of submittals? Just clarifying what we just decided to do for July 28th. Are we going to, just what we're going to submit tomorrow, that's still include minority, majority?
What we would submit tomorrow would include the majority and minority report.
And the actual study?
Yes, yes. Other discussion on the motion, thanks?
In your final sentences, if those discussions result in suggested changes, then the chair shall convene a meeting. I want to ask you about how the chair shall convene a meeting, so that we all, what method will you use to make sure everybody knows?
Well, it would be the July 28th meeting, unless something happened after that, in which case it would notify everybody of the
By
date of the
email?
meeting. Yes.
With how much time?
As much as practical. You can't control the state.
You realize what that's important.
Yes. Discussion on the main motion? Are you ready for?
Who's the vice chair?
John is in charge of vice.
Nice.
I've been waiting to say that. On anything. Further discussion on the main motion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed? Abstentions? So the motion carries by a vote of 14-1, I believe. Okay. All right, other business then. July 28th meeting starting time. Would it be convenient? Yes.
I want to discuss the need of moving forward to any next two meetings, if we make it a policy that any information that committee members want to bring up regarding any documents or whatever, that we as committee members at least receive that information 24 hours prior to the meeting. It's getting frustrating here at meetings to receive documents at meetings and to try to read them and understand them and talk about them in a very short amount of time. And I think in order to show respect to those documents, give them the due diligence, I need time. It sounds like a lot of people here need time in that. So I'd like us to, if people have feedback on the minority report or how it impacts the majority report, whatever, that please share that with you so you can get that to us within a 24-hour time period. And not, and anything that comes, if somebody brings something to the meeting, that we just simply not address it. Okay. Because that's my idea with this.
Okay.
So that's just my,
no.
I put that out there for discussion.
So may I, with that out there, may I address the starting time for the July 28th meeting? And could we, I'm not gonna cut off all other business, but is it about the starting time?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
I like 6 o'clock personally.
6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Where's the meeting?
The meeting will be here.
Here.
Am I correct, John?
Sure, wherever you want.
6 PM?
I don't like 6 PM. I like earlier.
I would like earlier too, but if it influences your decision, if it's earlier, it diminishes significantly the likelihood that I attend. Which may,
I like
might
earlier.
make it early.
Well, this one's 4:30, so.
Yes, but the 28th is a date where I have a mediation schedule.
No, I'm just saying, go back and forth, it's 4:30 and 6, so.
Yeah. So, but it's your pleasure as a
When is
committee.
the earliest you might be able to attend?
Those are unpredictable.
Okay.
So what I will do now is I'll go back and I'll ask the attendees of the mediation to start early and tell them I have a meeting and pray their cooperation.
Sure,
I
we
like
need to set a time now for the next meeting.
But we do need to set a time now for the next meeting. Yes. 6 PM it is, okay? And, other business. Chuck?
Could you, or could we review the open meeting laws as it pertains to this committee?
It's not a committee.
Pardon?
It's not a committee.
What are we?
Planning committee?
No, I mean,
It's not
you
a
mean the designees to negotiate? on
No,
the exam?
no, our committee.
Oh, our committee.
That, I've been very careful, we have a conversation, no more than 2 or 3 people, 4 people, and, I'm trying not to come anywhere near. And while we've been discussing articles and decisions that we're about to make, now that we've submitted this to the state, are we allowed to have conversations with more than 6 people?
No.
Or 7 people about, communications with the public, things that we're not gonna be deciding on as a
We can have those discussions, but only in an open meeting. If a quorum of this committee needs to transact business, and that is interpreted as business, then it needs to be in a really warm public meeting.
And remind us again of how many constitute quorum?
8 of us constitutes a quorum. So it's a 15-member committee.
So in terms of working with the public and kind of understanding the merger and, that kind of stuff, is there a point at which more than 7 people here could have a conversation about that topic?
Outside of a public meeting, my understanding is no. I'll check with legal.
Until the vote?
Even until the vote, yes.
So have some duly warned meetings.
Right.
And you can create meetings.
Well,
It doesn't have to be this group to have it be duly warned.
Meaning we don't need the whole committee here in order to have it.
You can duly warn
Yes,
a
we-
meeting in your community.
Megs is absolutely right. In fact, I think you may have done that in Wilmington, right? In relation to this. Am I right?
Yes.
I don't,
No, it wasn't
they were
officially
duly warned, I
warned.
think they were publicized broadly,
Diane?
Yeah.
but we didn't have a quorum.
Can we create a subcommittee slash task force related to public relations around the merger that could get started over the summer?
We could, but I have some serious reservations about that.
Okay.
My serious reservations is I think that John, Jim, and myself have a very busy month ahead of us. I think we've got a lot of work to do. And I'm concerned that focus ought not to be diverted from that work. I do think that will very rapidly become our agenda item in either late July or early August. But I am concerned about diverting us at this point. But if the committee feels otherwise, we can do that.
But in terms of email conversations about this, and just, thinking about how we're going to be communicating to the public, up to 7 is.
That is my understanding, yes. But once you convene a quorum, then you should only do that in an open meeting.
What is a duly warned meeting?
A duly warned meeting requires various public notices a certain period of time in advance, and notice to all committee members.
So that would pertain to this as well.
No, I don't believe it pertains to this, and we'll ask our legal counsel if he disagrees, but this is not a committee. These are the designated negotiators on behalf of the committee.
Have we designated our negotiators?
We just did.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I see.
Dan?
Do we need signatures now that we have 15 people in terms of the majority report? Or were you gonna wait and do that at a different time?
I think, logistically, I just don't have a way for you to sign things right now, so.
Okay.
But we will figure that out. Yeah.
So when is all this being sent?
Excuse me?
Tomorrow? And yet you don't have a way to sign it now?
I just wasn't sure if we had to.
It's being sent to the AOE for review, it's not being sent to the state board yet.
Other business?
Other business, over the next 4 weeks or 3 weeks until our next meeting, as we hit these major milestones, do you have a mechanism to update us on any major events that we achieve or don't achieve?
I would anticipate, and I haven't thought too clearly, but I would anticipate writing a report, which would also be a public document when we post it on our website. In other words, as there's a need to report, I can report to you, but as long as it's in a public fashion. Okay. Any other business people wish to transact? I have one last item before I entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you all for your great work. This is a milestone moment. Thank you so much. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Now I'm gonna have to recreate it on the back for next time.
We'll figure that out, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Maybe
Thanks,
yeah, maybe
folks.
I'm not your end.
A lot of work today. Work into this.
Okay, lots of problems.
Lots of numbers.
Okay, so you and I and Jim can sit down briefly. I don't want to keep you too long.
Yeah, sure.